It's hard to overestimate the importance of the blacksmith in communities of the 18th century. Without the blacksmith and what he does, life stops. Without the blacksmith, we don't have carriages, we don't have ships. The carpenter doesn't have tools, the farmer doesn't have tools, and without the blacksmith, we don't have anything to cook with. Basically, we're back in the Stone Age. Imagine you are the person in the community that without your labor, no one could do their job. That's the blacksmith in the 18th century. What is blacksmithing? Moxon in 1703 gives us a definition in his book of handiwork. He says, "Smithing is an art by which an irregular lump of iron is wrought into an intended shape." So this means that whether it's a tiny tack or a giant anchor, it's all done by the blacksmith, and he starts off with a big hunk of iron. Picture the day of the blacksmith. This is not an easy job. He's got to get up early, and he's building a hot and smoky fire with dirty coal. He's got heavy tools like hammers, dirty tongs. He's picking up iron and he's getting it as hot as possible and working it. And he does this over and over again every single day. Who is the blacksmith in the 18th century? It's the kind of job that you apprentice for. It takes a long time to train someone to be the blacksmith because he's got to have a lot of different kinds of skills. He has to be able to turn this lump of iron into any number of things. Again, whether it's a screw or an anchor or a very complicated kind of machine. He's an inventor. He's also a mechanic. He's like a car mechanic. He's always got his hands dirty.
My full name, James Quint Tyree III, Jamie, blacksmith for 30 plus years now, here in Limestone, Tennessee, born and raised. Most of my work is replication work more than anything else, copying the old work, existing pieces. The tools that are used in a modern shop, for the most part, are no different than the tools that were used during the building of King Solomon's temple. Even the Romans had forging hammers, very large forging hammers to forge out iron, and they produced a lot of iron. The techniques of producing pieces are exactly the same. There's 8 basic steps, and that has not changed since the beginning of the Bronze Age. They're exactly the same, still done exactly the same way to produce exactly the same results.
As a blacksmith, you're going to start out at a very young age, making very, very simple things like nails or S-hooks. And you're going to build your own tools as you go, making hammers and tongs. That's what the blacksmith does. He not only makes tools for other people, but he makes his own tools. And you're going to do this job as long as your body will take it. And that might not be a long time. You might think that because the blacksmith is in such high demand that he would be well off, but that isn't necessarily true. It's a hot and dirty job and it doesn't pay that well. But there are specialist blacksmiths who make things like cutlery, guns, and high-end decorative items. There are times when the work of the blacksmith is raised to the level of art, and it puts him in a whole different category, a very sought-after man. That being said, most blacksmiths are doing the grunt work. They're doing the plowshares, they're doing the chain links, they're doing the horseshoes, and they're making these things over and over and over again. When I was much younger, I watched the blacksmith at work, and boy, they make it look easy. I got out a hunk of metal in the forge and I started working at my first knife. It did not go as planned. I learned very quickly that it takes a lot of work to be a good blacksmith. When we want to understand the day-to-day life of the blacksmith, we need to look at the day books, the diaries of the blacksmith himself or the people who use him. Matthew Patton's diary from the late 18th century is a perfect example. He's a farmer, he's also a surveyor, and he goes to the blacksmith many times throughout his diary getting things done. He has to have his plow mended. He has to have an axe repaired. He has to have a chain made so he can hook his oxen to his plow. He's getting specialty augers and drill bits made because he's a carpenter. Every time he goes to the blacksmith, he mentions where the metal came from. This is very, very important. He says it was made with my iron. It was made with the blacksmith's iron. I traded this iron. The blacksmith is working with a very expensive commodity. So where this metal comes from and exactly how much it weighs is very, very important to every one of these transactions. In the circumstance where his axe was broken, the eye was broken out of the axe, sort of the back half. He has it repaired and he gives the eye to the blacksmith, sort of like a tip, because just that hunk of metal was worth something.
This is iron ore as it's come out of the ground. This is added into a furnace called a smelter with charcoal, which heats it up to a very high temperature, and it actually separates somewhat the iron from its iron ore. It's not hot enough to completely separate it, so you have so much of molten silica, which is a glass, and it becomes a spongy mass. This is called a bloom. Then from this stage, it would be taken to a tilt hammer, used to as it was called, very gently squeezed to consolidate the iron and to drive out as much of the slag as possible. And that's where the term wrought iron come from. It was the iron bloom was wrought or forged into usable material that would go to the blacksmith then. And then they had to forge it down to whatever size of material they needed.
So far we've just been talking about iron, and some of this iron was made in North America in the 18th century. There are iron works, but a lot of it is imported. Probably most of it is imported. And it's not just iron, but there's also high-grade steel. Very expensive steel. And there are times in Matthew Patton's diary where he says, I brought so much iron, and then I traded for so much very expensive steel. The blacksmith is not only working in a city, a town, a village, but he's also traveling. On any large ship, you have a blacksmith, and yes, he has a forge, he has an anvil, he has spare iron and coal. Also on expeditions like Lewis and Clark's travels to the West Coast, they had 3 blacksmiths along. They made knives, tomahawks for trade with Native Americans. They also fixed their muskets and anything else that needed repaired. During the American Revolution, the soldiers could not do their job without the blacksmith backing them up. He was making sure their muskets worked, that the wagons could move, that the cannons could move. He was making surgical equipment. It's fair to say without the work of the blacksmith, we could not have won the Revolutionary War. My favorite part about studying the blacksmith's art is that so many of the pieces still survive today. Many of them are on the wall behind me. We have these things, we can touch them and feel them and understand the man who made them. Many things from the 18th century still exist, but they haven't been used like these iron objects have been. Every single one of these things that the blacksmith made, they still have the marks of their use over all these years. So it gives us an entirely different feel than something like a piece of fabric or a piece of paper.
It's almost like you can feel the creator, the smith, speaking through that material. And it's connection from one smith to another, because we instantly recognize processes, or we can look at marks on it and instantly recognize what tool would have been used. And then once you figure out how they've done the piece and all that, and you make your piece and then compare it to the original, you know, and you say, well, I'm not up to snuff with that smith yet, or looky there, I created what he has created. You know, at least in some sense, some small sense, I'm maybe equal.
Here on the channel, we've done blacksmithing and we've made some of the tools. We've also used tools that are hundreds of years old. We've put our own marks on these tools. They are part of what we've done on the channel. In a way, our cabin is connected with those cabins made 200 and 300 years ago, made with the same tools. It's part of a line of history, all connected together. So what do you think? Is the blacksmith the most important job in the world?